What it do, YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the debut EP by Bobby Shmurda. And basically, this project is called Shmurda She Wrote, and this came out in the fall of 2014. Really, this EP had a large promotion cycle just because of the hit single Hot Nigga, which came out in the summer of 2014. It's one of the larger rap songs of that year, and pretty much one of the largest songs of 2014 as well. It went 5 times platinum in terms of single sales and that type of stuff. Hit number 6 on the Billboard 100. It was pretty much one of the yeah, it was just a huge hit song out of 2014. And when rap was starting to kind of get more Drake-like and Party Next Door-like and The Weeknd-like in terms of being more R&B tinged and that type of stuff, Bobby Shmurda stood Bobby Shmurda stood out like a lighthouse around that time, just with bringing back some gangsta rap and kind of hardcore hip hop, and especially kind of an early induction of like Brooklyn drill. Now, Pop Smoke tried to bring that sound back briefly in his short lifetime between like 2019 and early 2020. But Bobby Shmurda was kind of doing that stuff too. But this is like basically for some reason New York hip hop got sabotaged twice over because Bobby Shmurda just a little over a month after this EP came out went to prison for like 7.5 years. So that was basically kind of the concept where he was in prison from 2014 all the way until early 2021 and lost a lot of his creative steam that he had in 2014 with songs like Hot Nigga and Bobby Bitch. And it's really kind of unfortunate because I just wonder. I remember at least Hot Nigga in 2014. I definitely remember Lil Wayne doing like a freestyle to it on like his Sorry for the Wait project and his mixtape. But that song's a real massive smash. It's just too bad because Bobby Shmurda has been out of prison for a couple years now, but he's just been kind of I don't want to say I don't want to say full blown BSing, but he's just been kind of like being kind of flittery as far as putting out new projects and that type of stuff. He has dropped an EP and maybe like a mixtape or something, but in terms of actually pumping out that album that should have come out like in 2015 or something, it just hasn't manifested. And really, he's kind of changed up. I know that some folks kind of were flagging and I know some folks on the internet were kind of trolling Bobby Shmurda because of his dancing videos that he did like on Instagram and that type of stuff or Twitter or wherever it was and that sort of thing. But I just kind of look after it. I do feel like the Bobby Shmurda of Hot Nigga, I don't see that as often. I mean, I haven't listened to too many of his songs past like 2014. I would definitely have to say I don't want to suppose that like the Hot Nigga days of Bobby Shmurda are over just because this was a really good sound, but it just really got the head got cut off the snake like immediately in 2014. This whatever sound he was trying to do in 2014 just didn't happen, and 7 years passed and the style changed, and that sweet spot just unfortunately seemed like it was gone. And not just him, but Bobby Shmurda had a buddy called Rowdy Rebel who went to prison for 6 years, just like him. He went to prison for a decent length of time, basically about the same length. I just would kind of have to say and stuff that it's just kind of an unfortunate aspect as far as that kind of goes, just because that was something. But yeah, like I said, I mean, New York kind of sound two cats, Bobby Shmurda and Pop Smoke both kind of had troubles and struggles trying to come up and bring New York sound kind of back. But there is at least a small taste of that on this project, so we'll go ahead and talk about that just kind of, I mean, it brings back New York. It definitely has some riveting kind of energy, but this is still kind of somewhat a patchy EP. It probably needed at least one more song, something like that, just to kind of solidify it some. So the first single was Hot Nigga, and and this is a real ferocious kind of song. This definitely was bringing back gangsta rap in 2014 when most folks were kind of on that Drake type edge or when most folks were kind of on that Drake type tip and things like that, Ty Dolla Sign and some of those type people, where I definitely feel like Hot Nigga is just a completely demonic beat. It just really sounds like something ferocious, just out of the bats of hell or something like that. It's a real demonic kind of sounding one, just a rave kind of mosh song, a rap mosh song if you can mess with that in that sort of context, and just has some very vivid energy. It's just a very gutter song that nails its edge completely. And it's just an edgy song. This is the sort of stuff that 50 Cent and some of those type folks were doing with New York that kind of make those gutter cuts back in the early 2000s and that type of stuff. But this is like one of the most ferocious East Coast this is one of the most ferocious East Coast songs I've heard in terms of that particular edge in a long time. I mean, it's from 2014, that's almost 10 years ago, but this just had so much bite, and this is the kind of song that rap needs again. I definitely feel like just something like this is definitely a song that rap needs again in terms of just the sheer highlighted aspect of how well and how vivid this kind of took off on the charts and just stormed apart. I mean, despite the fact that this was not a very like blue collar and makeshift kind of song, I still feel like it tore apart the charts and a lot of folks fucked with it. It was just a humongous kind of song. And it's just kind of, I mean, I wasn't expecting at this point this early in his career for Bobby Shmurda to do like the blue collar and makeshift stuff, but I definitely feel like maybe another single. I mean, both singles on this album, Hot Nigga and Bobby Bitch, are not that user friendly in terms of being like radio ready and that type of stuff. But I think that was kind of the point where Bobby Shmurda wasn't really aiming for that pretty much at all. He was just trying to do like gangster rap through and through. But it's just kind of, I like the fact that this song hit as heavily as it did. But I would almost say if there would have been an album by Bobby Shmurda, I just wonder what the single would have been that would have been released to radio as far as that's kind of concerned. Because this is kind of like a street single. This definitely has the street single aspect of it down pretty pat. Both the singles do have the street side of things down pretty pat, but they're just not very regular in terms of like airplay in terms of what could happen in terms of that makeshift. That's kind of the point. It's just it brought back some of that it brought back some of that edge that like rap was kind of missing from around that time. It's just kind of the concept that just kind of an in between, you know. So this is kind of the thing. But the second single was Bobby Bitch, and this is kind of a variation of Hot Nigga. It's the same kind of pitch and kind of more street oriented gangster rap type stuff, but it just has a more dramatic beat, not quite as rave and demonic as Hot Nigga, but definitely kind of dramatic, and it just kind of feels like an elegant kind of East Coast kind of song that feels very slurred, and it just is kind of a creeping kind of song. This is definitely one that kind of has like that East Coast kind of just weaving through the city buildings, that type of stuff, just kind of in a more slurred out kind of tone, this kind of in a more fancy tone, and just kind of a more elegant kind of sense in like a dramatic sense. So it's gangster rap, but it does have its elegance about it. It's gangster rap, but it does kind of have its elegance about it. It can kind of be suited up and dressing to impress and that type of stuff, stepping out in like a little bit of flashiness. This one's a little bit more chart ready, and this one's a little bit more radio ready somewhat, but it still kind of has like a decent kind of edge towards it. That's just kind of, it's a great follow up to Hot Nigga. Not quite as rave and as like carnivorous as that one, but it is kind of a great follow up to say that Bobby didn't fall off just that quickly as far as that kind of went. This really happens to be a thing. But yeah, I feel like that's one of the few things that this EP kind of lacks, is just a single that proves that he could get some units sold and that type of stuff. Because I think he really was aiming for like the AZ and Nas type charts and just that sort of stuff in like the early 90s and 2000s kind of gangster rap that kind of happened. It was trying to bring back that sound, but I do think it could have at least used a single like In the Club by 50 Cent or something like that, or like you know, just there's not really any ladies songs on here either, but just to kind of say like it could have used a song like In the Club by 50 Cent or like Disco Inferno or something like that. But that's just kind of the concept. Doesn't really have it. It's pretty thoroughly street project, and both the singles kind of have that edge towards it, and they're both great songs, but it's just kind of, that's the thing. So out of 5 songs on this project, I only recommend 3. So the only other song apart from the 2 singles that I recommend is just Living Life. Living Life is a flashy and kind of cruise out kind of song. It's definitely kind of one for like 2010s trap type vibes. This early 2010s trap where the bass is kind of heavy in the vehicle and you're just cruising out and you feel those vibrations and that type of stuff. Just a great song for kind of stunting and that sort of thing. It's just a vivid club cut at that. This really has like some flashy kind of vibes. Just an early taste of what trap would kind of do just years later. It's kind of interesting that it's pretty interesting that Bobby Shmurda had his radar up to that degree to be able to pinpoint like 2010s trap and Brooklyn drill in the same fold, to be able to talk about like stuff that wouldn't hit for like years later. Like 2010s trap would start to manifest. It kind of did in 2014, but it took 2015, 2016 or so. Travis Scott and Future and Migos and Drake were kind of doing that sort of thing. But this was kind of before. I mean, Drake was kind of in his off year. Future kind of had like a lukewarm receive kind of project with Honest. So it was just kind of a different type thing that Bobby Shmurda was kind of trying to take was trying to kind of spearhead this particular style, but it was just so brief. It was just kind of the concept. But this is kind of an early taste of some 2010s trap. Living Life is a vivid club cut. I definitely feel like it just has that particular emphasis as far as that kind of went. Just good to kind of get those styles. And then talk about the two songs I didn't enjoy. I didn't really enjoy Wipe the Case Away that much. This was kind of just like a coolin' kind of song where you just kind of cruise back. It's the sort of stuff that Lil Durk kind of does, and Roddy Ricch and some of those type folks that kind of just have like these kind of more sing-songy kind of Drake-esque type raps on there, and it just kind of wasn't really the pitch of it as how I liked it. I mean, it was kind of a taste. This is another one that kind of showcased that Bobby Shmurda really had his radar up in terms of the trends that were going on. It was kind of like an early preview of that, but didn't quite enjoy that one as much. And it's kind of the same thing with Worldwide Nigga. That one was not an R&B type tune, but it was just kind of like an East Coast sounding dramatic type one. It was just a worse version of like Living Life and that sort of thing. It just was trying to be like a dramatic kind of starry-eyed kind of city sprawler as far as going along with that, but it just took a little while to start up, and I didn't really appreciate the production arrangements of how that one kind of went. That just kind of happens to be the thing. But yeah, this EP is kind of a decent winner just because of the fact that it had so many styles that would go on to manifest years later. And this was kind of an early taste that just got halted immediately because Bobby Shmurda went to prison for 7 years. Not just 1 year, not just 6 months, not just 2.5 years, but he was in prison for the rest of the 2010s and a decent chunk of the 2020s decade as far as that kind of went. He's really only been out of prison for a little over 2 years. So just to kind of be able to say he was doing a lot of things. Hot Nigga was a brilliant single. Bobby Bitch was a great follow up that proved that he wouldn't have been a one hit wonder. And he was trying to capitalize on sounds, and he was kind of spearheading that stuff. He was kind of taking flight on like 2010s trap and drill and some of that type stuff, and even like the type of Lil Durk and Roddy Ricch type music that kind of happens. But all those differential styles, he did kind of at least have a taste in trying to do, but this got halted pretty immediately. Not all the styles kind of hit as heavily as I'd like them to, but it's just a quality aspect to say that all this sort of styles was happening just in the summer and fall of 2014, which is just kind of odd because not everyone was doing it around that time. So it's revolutionary in some senses, but I give this EP, me liking 3 out of 5 songs on here, I give this EP like a 6.5 out of 10. And the social score, I'll give a 7 out of 10 because Hot Nigga and Bobby Bitch are just really brilliant singles. They just have rave energy. They're great social cuts for vibing with your buddies and that type of stuff. And Living Life is a great club song and a great cruising out and kind of thumping, kind of stunting and kind of pulling up kind of song as far as that kind of goes. But I would almost include Worldwide Nigga as a part of that, but it just didn't quite stack up for me. But that is another one in case you need more of that. So the social score gets a 7. In terms of the future, like I said, Bobby Shmurda has kind of been quiet recently. He's been out of prison for a couple years. He did put out another EP and like a mixtape or something, and he does have a group called GS9, which I'm going to review some more of their stuff, particularly their 2014 stuff. I might review some stuff by Rowdy Rebel too, but I just would have to look after. This is a pretty rock solid debut, but this really was marred by like some mishaps that kind of happened.